Stop right now, slow your breath, quiet your thoughts, and listen, because this moment is not ordinary and this message is not accidental. My child, I am calling your attention because something is shifting, and you cannot afford to be distracted. You are about to see my hand, not as a distant idea or a comforting phrase, but as a living movement in your life. What I am revealing is urgent, personal, and time-sensitive. If you have felt pressure, silence, or anticipation building, it is because this is the moment to awaken, to listen, and to prepare your heart for what is already unfolding. Stop, put everything down for a moment, because what I am about to say is not meant to brush past your ears like another comforting phrase. It is meant to strike your spirit like thunder and steady your heart like a hand on your shoulder. You have been moving through your days as if you must carry the weight of everything alone, as if the outcome depends on how hard you grind, how well you explain yourself, how carefully you plan, how tightly you control. But I am speaking to you now to interrupt that exhausting illusion. You are about to see my hand. Not a rumor of it, not a distant story of what I did for someone else, not a vague hope you whisper to keep from breaking. No. You are about to witness my involvement in a way that forces your fear to loosen its grip and your doubt to swallow its own words. Listen closely, because I am not addressing a crowd, I am addressing you. I know exactly where you are sitting, exactly what you have been thinking when you stare at the ceiling, exactly what you do not say out loud because you are tired of feeling like you have to be strong. I have watched you try to keep peace in places that drain you, watched you smile while your insides tremble, watched you act fine so no one will ask questions you do not have the energy to answer. And I tell you this with all the authority of heaven. Your life is not slipping through my fingers. I have not misplaced you. I have not forgotten your name. I have not overlooked your prayers because they were whispered instead of shouted. I heard you when you said, Lord, I don't know what to do. I heard you when you said, Lord, if you don't move, I don't know how I'll make it. I heard you when you said nothing at all, when your heart simply groaned because words failed you. Yes, I heard that too, because I understand the language of burdens you cannot explain. So do not mistake my timing for indifference. Do not confuse the quiet of this season with abandonment. When you cannot see my hand, it does not mean it is not working. It often means it is working in places your eyes cannot reach. I am rearranging what you thought was permanent. I am confronting what has been hidden. I am shifting what has resisted change for years. And I am doing it not to tease you with delay, but to prepare you for clarity. You have been asking for a sign, asking for proof, asking for confirmation, and you keep looking for something small, one word, one message, one sudden breakthrough that erases every struggle overnight. But I am telling you, what is coming will be larger than small. It will be undeniable. It will carry my fingerprint all over it, so that even you, the one who has wrestled with skepticism and disappointment, will have to admit, only the Lord could have done this. That is why I am calling you to attention right now. I am drawing your focus back to me, away from the noise that drains you, away from the anxious rehearsals of worst-case scenarios, away from the fear that has been pretending to be wisdom. You do not need to predict every outcome to be safe. You need to stay close to me. You do not need to have every answer before you take the next step. You need to trust the one who sees the end from the beginning. So breathe, and let your heart come out of hiding. I am not speaking to shame you for doubting. I am speaking to strengthen you for what you will soon witness. Because when my hand begins to move openly in your life, you must be ready to recognize it, receive it, and walk with me through it without freezing, without second-guessing, without pulling back into old survival habits, because I did not bring you this far to leave you trembling at the doorway of your own answered prayers. Hear this clearly, because I am answering a question you have been too afraid to ask out loud. Yes, I still see you, and I have never stopped. I know there are moments when you look around and wonder how your life became so quiet, so heavy, so unnoticed. You scroll past other people's progress, their celebrations, their sudden breakthroughs, and you ask yourself why your faith seems to be met with delay instead of reward. You wonder if you missed something, if you prayed the wrong way, if you waited too long, if your mistakes somehow disqualified you from being noticed again. You replay conversations, choices, and failures, trying to trace the exact moment where you think I turned away. But listen to me now, without interrupting yourself with fear. Your wondering has never offended me, and your questions have never pushed me away. I see you when you sit in rooms where you feel invisible. I see you when you do the right thing and no one acknowledges it. I see you when you hold your tongue to keep peace, even though part of you wants to scream. I see you when you give more than you receive, when you show up tired, when you keep going because stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. I see the strength it takes for you to wake up each day and try again when nothing around you has changed yet. And I see the moments you feel foolish for still believing, foolish for still hoping, foolish for still trusting me after so many unanswered prayers, or so you think. But what you call unanswered, I call stored. What you call ignored, I call remembered. Not a single tear you tried to hide has fallen without being counted. Not a single prayer you whispered under your breath has been lost in the air. Not a single act of faith you thought was small has been overlooked. You keep thinking that visibility is proven by speed, by applause, by instant results, but my sight works differently. I see roots before fruit. I see endurance before reward. I see the private battles that shape the public victories you will one day walk into. You think you are unseen because nothing has shifted yet, but I tell you this. Some of my most intentional work happens when nothing looks different on the surface. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are not overlooked. You are being observed with care. I have been watching how you respond when encouragement is scarce, how you treat people when you are disappointed, how you talk to yourself when hope feels fragile. I am not measuring you by perfection. I am watching your persistence. And even now, as you question whether I still see you, I am leaning closer, not farther away. Your wondering is not the end of the story. It is the doorway to deeper trust. Stay with me here, because what I am about to reveal next will reframe everything you thought my silence meant. Let me dismantle the lie that has been whispering to you in the quiet. My silence was never my absence. You have learned to associate love with noise, constant reassurance, immediate responses, visible movement, but I am teaching you a deeper language, one that does not depend on constant signs to remain secure. When things grew quiet, you assumed something was wrong. You assumed you had done something to make me step back. You assumed that if I were truly involved, you would feel me more, hear me more, see clearer evidence. But silence, to me, is not emptiness. It is concentration. It is the sound of careful work being done where interruption would only delay the outcome. While you were listening for answers, I was arranging them. While you were waiting for clarity, I was aligning timing. While you were counting days and wondering how much longer you could endure, I was building endurance inside you so that what comes next would not crush you. You mistook the quiet for abandonment because you did not yet understand what was being constructed beneath it. I was closing doors you kept knocking on because they led nowhere. I was rerouting paths that would have drained you dry. I was separating you from patterns you had outgrown, but still clung to because they felt familiar. And I did all of this without making noise, not to confuse you, but to protect the process. You see, if I explained every step while it was happening, you would try to manage it. If I announced every move, you would interfere with fear. So I kept you close but quiet, teaching you to trust my presence even when you could not track my activity. That is not neglect. That is intimacy. That is me inviting you to rest instead of control, to listen instead of panic, to stay instead of run. And even when you filled the silence with your worries, even when you assumed the worst, even when you felt tempted to give up, I did not withdraw. I stayed. I watched you wrestle, watched you grow, watched you learn how to stand without leaning on constant confirmation. The silence trained you to seek me for who I am, not just for what I can fix. It refined your faith from desperation into relationship. And now, as the quiet begins to lift, you will realize something startling. The silence did not weaken you, it strengthened you. You can hear me more clearly now because you are less frantic. You can recognize my movement more easily because you are no longer demanding control. The absence you feared was actually preparation in disguise. And as we continue forward, you will see that what felt like stillness was the groundwork for motion, what felt like delay was precision, and what felt like distance was me standing closer than you ever realized, waiting for the exact moment when what I had been building in secret could finally be revealed without being destroyed. And now, proceed with the next 2 message points. Develop each message point into a single, well-developed paragraph of up to 500 words. Take extra care to strictly adhere to the word count. Each message must be no less than 500 words. Writing slightly more than 500 words is acceptable, but never below. Start each message with a powerful hook that immediately captures attention. The overall tone should sound as though you godlike roleplay-like theme, metaphorical, not literal, but it is understood to be a creative representation rather than a literal divine message or personally speaking and delivering these messages. Write in a you-focused, conversational style, directly addressing the listener as you, so it feels like a personal one-on-one conversation between you and the listener. Do not restart or conclude between messages. Instead, make each one feel like a continuation of the previous message, as if the conversation never paused. Ensure the overall flow remains deep, meaningful, and emotionally engaging, extending the message in a way that feels spiritually rich and connected. Also, give me message point no and the heading. Let me tell you something that will change how you see every delayed answer and every long night of uncertainty. Your waiting was never wasted, it was a weapon being forged. You thought waiting meant weakness, meant being stuck, meant falling behind while others surged ahead. But all along, something far more powerful was happening inside you. Each moment you chose not to quit, each day you kept showing up without clarity, each time you resisted the urge to numb the ache or abandon hope, you were strengthening something unseen. Waiting sharpened your discernment. It exposed what you truly trusted when comfort was no longer available. You didn't realize it, but every time you waited without becoming bitter, every time you prayed without demanding, every time you obeyed without applause, you were building authority. Authority is not loud, it is steady. And it does not come from instant victory but from sustained faith. You learned how to breathe in uncertainty, how to stand without leaning on constant reassurance, how to hold your ground when nothing around you confirmed that you were right to keep believing. That kind of waiting terrifies fear and dismantles impatience, because it proves that you are no longer driven by urgency, but anchored in trust. And yes, there were moments you waited imperfectly, moments you complained, doubted, questioned, even wanted to walk away, but even then, you stayed. You didn't abandon the conversation. You didn't shut your heart completely. You kept listening, even when your listening was mixed with frustration. That matters more than you know. Waiting taught you restraint when reaction would have cost you everything. It taught you humility when pride wanted to demand explanations. It taught you empathy for others who struggle silently, because you now know what it feels like to hope without evidence. And here is what you could not see while time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every delay weakened the grip of what once controlled you. You are no longer desperate for approval. You are no longer frantic for validation. You are no longer easily shaken by temporary outcomes. That is power. That is readiness. That is why I say your waiting was a weapon, because it disarmed fear, dismantled entitlement, and disciplined your heart to move with wisdom instead of impulse. What is coming next would have been mishandled by the version of you that existed before the waiting. But now you are steadier. Now, you can hold blessing without worshiping it. Now, you can walk into open doors without running ahead of purpose. And as we move forward together, you will begin to see how the patience you thought was passive was actually active preparation, positioning you to recognize my hand not just when it moves but when it invites you to move with it. Pay attention to this truth, because it reframes every ounce of resistance you have felt. The pressure intensified because you were closed, not because you were failing. You thought the opposition meant you were off track, that the heaviness was a warning sign to turn back, but pressure often increases right before transition. When something valuable is about to shift, everything, that benefits from keeping you where you are will push harder. You felt misunderstood, misjudged, stretched, and tested not because you were weak, but because you were advancing. Pressure exposed what still tried to cling to you: old fears, old patterns, old voices that thrived when you doubted yourself. And instead of removing the pressure instantly, I allowed it to refine you. I watched how you responded when support thinned out, when answers didn't come quickly, when you had to choose between comfort and growth. Each moment of pressure asked a quiet question: will you retreat into what feels safe, or will you trust the process unfolding even when it costs you familiarity? You may not have realized it at the time, but the pressure revealed that you were no longer content with shallow peace. You wanted depth. You wanted truth. You wanted alignment. That desire made you uncomfortable with compromises you once tolerated. It made you restless in environments that no longer matched who you were becoming. That restlessness was not confusion. It was proximity to change. Pressure has a way of clarifying what matters. It forces decisions. It demands honesty. It brings buried tensions to the surface so they can no longer hide behind routine. And yes, there were days you wondered if you could withstand it, days you felt like something had to give. But notice this: you didn't break it. You bent. You adjusted. You cried. You prayed. You paused, but you didn't abandon your core. That endurance is evidence that you were being strengthened, not crushed. Pressure does not mean you are being punished. It often means you are being positioned. It compresses time, sharpens focus, and prepares you to step into spaces that require resilience. You are closer now than you have ever been, even if it doesn't feel like arrival yet. The resistance you felt was the echo of change approaching. And as you continue forward, you will begin to understand that what tried to push you back only confirmed that you were nearing something significant. Stay present here with me, because what comes next will reveal why the pressure was allowed and how it cleared the way for what is finally ready to unfold. Let me speak plainly now, because what you have been feeling was not chaos, it was a necessary shaking. You thought things were falling apart, but in truth, they were being loosened. What could not come with you into what is next had to be exposed, unsettled, and removed, even if the process felt violent to your emotions. You wondered why certain relationships grew tense, why familiar structures stopped supporting you, why habits that once comforted you suddenly felt empty or heavy. It felt unfair, abrupt, even cruel at times, but listen closely. I do not strip things away to punish you. I remove them to protect you. You were carrying weight you had outgrown. You were maintaining attachments that would have fractured you under the pressure of what you are stepping into. Some things looked harmless, even helpful, but they were no longer aligned with who you were becoming. So I shook them not to confuse you, but to reveal their instability. Anything truly meant to remain would have endured the shaking. Anything that fell was already compromised. And yes, it hurt because you had memories there. You had investment there. You had hope tied to outcomes that did not survive the movement. But imagine what would have happened if I had allowed you to carry all of that into your next season, how it would have collapsed under responsibility, how it would have distracted you at critical moments, how it would have pulled you backward when you were meant to move forward. The shaking forced clarity and showed you what depended on convenience instead of commitment, what thrived on comfort instead of truth. You began to see patterns you once ignored, dynamics you once justified, limits you once accepted because you didn't know anything else. And even when you resisted letting go, even when you asked me to stabilize what I was clearly dismantling, I stayed firm, not because I didn't care about your pain, but because I cared about your future more. There are things that feel like home only because you lived there too long. There are roles you learned to play that kept peace but drained your soul. There are versions of you that survived, but were never meant to lead. I shook those foundations so you would stop rebuilding on ground that could not hold what is coming. This shaking was not random. It was surgical. It targeted what could not sustain growth, what would have demanded compromise, what would have cost you alignment later. And now, even though the dust is still settling, you can feel it. You are lighter, more aware, less entangled, You may grieve what was lost, and that grief is valid, but do not confuse loss with failure. This was clearance. This was preparation. This was me making room so that when my hand moves openly, there will be space to receive it without resistance, without collapse, without regret. Here is the truth you did not expect, but desperately needed. You asked for circumstances to change, yet I focused first on transforming you. Not because I ignored your request, but because the version of you who prayed could not have sustained the answer. You wanted relief, resolution, forward motion, and I wanted readiness. You were looking outward, scanning for signs that things were finally shifting, while I was working inward, reshaping your instincts, your reactions, your sense of identity. You thought the delay meant denial, but it was refinement. If I had changed the situation before changing you, the same fears would have followed you into a new environment. The same patterns would have recreated familiar problems under different names. So I went deeper. I taught you to pause instead of react. I exposed the places where your worth was tied to outcomes instead of truth. I allowed frustration to surface so you could see what still controlled you. You learned humility not because you were weak, but because strength without humility becomes brittle. You learned patience not because I wanted you passive, but because impatience would have rushed you into misalignment. I challenged your motives. I questioned your attachments. I confronted the parts of you that wanted blessing without responsibility, progress without surrender, clarity without trust. And even though it was uncomfortable, even though you resisted at times, something remarkable happened. You grew. Quietly, steadily. You began to respond instead of explode. You began to discern instead of assume. You began to value peace over proving yourself. That change matters more than you realize, because the environment you are about to enter will amplify whatever you carry inside. I did not want your old fears magnified. I did not want your old insecurities given new platforms. So I changed you first. I strengthened your inner life so that when the outer shift arrives, it will not overwhelm you. You can now hold success without losing yourself. You can face opposition without collapsing. You can receive blessing without fearing its loss. That is growth you cannot fake. That is maturity that cannot be rushed. And now, as you stand here no longer who you were, not yet where you are going, you are better prepared than you think. The change you asked for is still coming, but it will meet a version of you that can steward it wisely. Stay present in this transformation, because the internal shift you survived is the very reason the external one will finally endure. And now, proceed with the next 2 message points. Develop each message point into a single, well-developed paragraph of up to 500 words. Take extra care to strictly adhere to the word count. Each message must be no less than 500 words. Writing slightly more than 500 words is acceptable, but never below. Start each message with a powerful hook that immediately captures attention. The overall tone should sound as though you godlike roleplay-like theme, metaphorical, not literal, but it is understood to be a creative representation rather than a literal divine message. Or personally speaking and delivering these messages. Write in a you-focused, conversational style, directly addressing the listener as you, so it feels like a personal one-on-one conversation between you and the listener. Do not restart or conclude between messages. Instead, make each one feel like a continuation of the previous message, as if the conversation never paused. Ensure the overall flow remains deep, meaningful, and emotionally engaging, extending the message in a way that feels spiritually rich and connected. Also, give me message point no in the heading. Pause right here, because something fundamental has shifted beneath your feet, even if your eyes are still adjusting to it. You are no longer standing on uncertain ground, you are standing on prepared ground. What once felt unstable, unpredictable, and unsafe has been quietly reinforced while you were focused on surviving the day-to-day. You remember how every step used to feel risky, how you questioned each decision because the ground beneath you never seemed firm enough to support bold movement. But preparation does not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrives as subtle stability. You have noticed it in the way you respond now, how you no longer panic at every unexpected change, how you pause before reacting, how your spirit no longer fractures under pressure the way it once did. That is not coincidence. That is foundation. I have been leveling the terrain beneath you, removing hidden faults, filling in cracks you didn't know were there, so that when you move forward, you do not sink under the weight of responsibility. Prepared ground means you can build without fear of collapse. It means your next steps will not be swallowed by old insecurities or unresolved patterns. You may still feel cautious, and that is understandable. You remember what it was like to stand on unstable soil, but caution does not mean you are unready. It means you are aware. And awareness is a strength, not a weakness. Look at how far you've come. You can now recognize misalignment before it entangles you. You can sense when something is off instead of forcing yourself to adapt. You can say no without explaining yourself to exhaustion. That is the ground doing its work, supporting you quietly, reliably, without drama. Prepared ground does not rush you. It holds you. It allows you to stand upright instead of bracing for impact. And even if nothing dramatic has happened yet, do not underestimate the power of being stable. Stability is what allows momentum to be sustained. It is what keeps progress from becoming another cycle of burnout. You are not late. You are not behind. You are positioned. The reason things feel different now is because they are. The environment has been altered to support growth rather than merely tolerate survival. Stay aware of this shift, because recognizing prepared ground is what gives you the confidence to take the next step without dragging fear along with you. And as we continue forward together, you will see that this stability is not the destination, it is the platform from which something unmistakable is about to rise. Listen carefully now, because what comes next will challenge your instincts to control and predict. You are about to witness something you could never force, no matter how hard you tried. You spent so much time believing that effort alone would unlock the door, that persistence without alignment would eventually break resistance. You pushed, strategized, explained yourself, overextended your energy, hoping that if you did enough, something would finally give. And while your effort was not meaningless, it was never meant to be the engine of the outcome. What is approaching cannot be manufactured, negotiated, or accelerated by sheer willpower. It will arrive with a clarity that disarms doubt, because it will not resemble anything you could have orchestrated on your own. That is intentional. Forced outcomes carry your fingerprints, unforced ones carry a piece that confirms their origin. You will recognize it not by adrenaline, but by alignment. There will be no frantic scrambling to keep it alive, no constant fear of losing it, no exhausting maintenance to prove its legitimacy. It will stand on its own. This is why earlier attempts fell apart, not because you lacked skill or desire, but because timing and alignment were missing. You were trying to extract fruit from a season that was still growing roots. And now that the roots are deep enough, the fruit will appear without strain. When it happens, you may be tempted to question it, to analyze it, to wonder if it is too good to be true. That hesitation comes from remembering how much effort you once poured into outcomes that never held. But this will feel different. You will not have to convince yourself to accept it. Your spirit will recognize it before your mind catches up. This is the kind of movement that quiets inner resistance instead of triggering it. You will notice that doors open without you knocking repeatedly, that conversations shift without manipulation, that opportunities align without you chasing them down. This does not mean you stop participating, it means you stop forcing. There is a difference between intentional action and anxious striving, and you have learned that difference through experience. What you are about to see will confirm that lesson. It will validate the waiting, the internal work, the ground that was prepared beneath you. And when others ask how it happened, you may struggle to explain it in linear terms, because it will not follow the pattern of effort equals outcome. It will follow the pattern of readiness meets opportunity. Stay present when this unfolds. Do not rush ahead of it, and do not lag behind out of fear. Let it reveal itself at its own pace. What cannot be forced also cannot be easily undone. And as this unforced movement begins to take shape, You will realize why everything up to this point had to happen exactly as it did, so that when this arrives, you are able to recognize it, receive it, and move with it rather than trying to control it. Feel this truth settle into you, because it will steady you when movement accelerates, when things begin to shift. It may feel sudden to you, but it has never been random to me. You often experience my work as an abrupt turn, a call you didn't expect, a door that opens without warning, a resolution that arrives faster than your mind can organize. But suddenness does not mean disorder. What appears instantaneous is usually the visible result of long, quiet alignment. You only see the moment of change. I see the months and years that led to it. I see the conversations you didn't hear, the delays that redirected you, the resistance that slowed you just enough to avoid disaster. I see the internal rewiring that took place when you thought nothing was happening. That is why when my hand moves openly, it can feel overwhelming. At first you are stepping into motion that has already been prepared. You might be tempted to question it, to ask if it's happening too fast, to worry that you'll lose control. But control was never the goal, coherence was. What is unfolding will make sense not because you planned every step, but because it fits who you have become. Sudden movement often exposes where trust truly lies. When things stayed slow, you could manage expectations. When acceleration comes, you must decide whether to cling to familiar pacing or step into unfamiliar flow. I am inviting you to trust the intelligence of timing you did not design. There is wisdom in momentum when it is aligned. You will notice that even as events pick up speed, there is an underlying calm, a sense that you are not scrambling, not chasing, not forcing. That calm is your confirmation. Random movement creates chaos. Purposeful movement creates clarity, even when it is fast. And yes, you will need to stay attentive. Sudden does not mean careless. It means you stay grounded while you move. You listen more closely. You respond instead of react. You stay present instead of jumping ahead in fear or excitement. Remember, I do not rush to impress, I move to establish. What unfolds next will not be fragile, even if it arrives quickly. It will have structure beneath it, support around it, and sustainability within it. Trust that if it is moving now, it is because the foundations are ready to hold it. You are not being thrown into something unprepared. You are being released into what hath been waiting. Let the suddenness awaken gratitude, not anxiety. Let it remind you that preparation does not always look dramatic, but it is always effective. Stay with me in this movement, because what feels fast to you is simply the moment when preparation and opportunity finally meet. Brace your heart for this, not with pride but with clarity. There will come a moment when the voices that question you will have nothing left to say. You remember the look, subtle, skeptical, sometimes dismissive. You remember the advice that sounded wise but carried no understanding of your inner conviction. You remember how people measured your progress by visible results and quietly concluded that you were mistaken to keep believing. Some doubted out loud, others doubted in silence. Some meant well, others projected their own fears onto your path. And there were moments when their doubt almost became yours, when you wondered if you were holding on to hope out of stubbornness rather than truth. But what is about to unfold will not require explanation. It will speak for itself. Silence does not come from embarrassment alone. It comes from recognition. When something undeniable takes shape, arguments dissolve. A need to justify fades. You will notice a shift, not necessarily applause, not necessarily apologies, but a quiet recalibration. People will reassess what they thought they knew about you. They will revisit assumptions they made when they only saw part of the picture. And in that silence, you will feel something unexpected, relief. Relief that you no longer need to prove your intuition. Relief that your faith is no longer on trial. Relief that you stayed when it would have been easier to quit just to align with external expectations. This is not about vindication, it is about alignment. You were never meant to convince everyone, only to remain faithful to what you were given to carry. When doubt fades around you, guard your heart carefully. Do not replay old wounds to savor validation. Do not harden yourself against those who misunderstood you. Remember, silence is not your trophy, growth is. Let the quiet that follows be spacious, not sharp. Use it to deepen your humility, not inflate your ego. The absence of doubt creates room for something better: collaboration, respect, genuine curiosity. And even if some never acknowledge the shift, that no longer matters. You are not building your life on their agreement. You are building it on truth that has now taken form. Let this moment remind you why you learned to listen inwardly, why you learned to trust without constant reinforcement, why you learned to stand alone when necessary. The silence of doubt is not the end of the conversation. It is the clearing of noise so you can hear what truly matters next. Stay grounded here, because as external voices quiet down, internal responsibility grows. What comes next will require discernment, grace, and steady presence, not reaction to past opinions. And you are ready for that, because you no longer need permission to be where you are. Let this land deeply, because your heart has been carrying quiet grief for longer than you admit. What is unfolding now is not a simple return to where you were, it is a restoration that exceeds what you thought was gone forever. You have measured loss in visible terms: time, opportunities, relationships, confidence, momentum, but loss also took invisible forms that weighed even more heavily. You lost trust in certain outcome. You lost the ease you once had in believing things would work out. You lost parts of yourself that felt hopeful, light, and unguarded. And while you learned to survive without those things, survival was never meant to be your ceiling. Restoration is not about giving you the same thing back in the same condition. It is about returning value with wisdom attached. What you receive now will not resemble what you lost, because you are no longer the same person who lost it. You carry discernment now. You carry boundaries. You carry a deeper understanding of what actually sustains you. That means what comes back into your life will come with structure, stability, and purpose. It will not require you to abandon yourself to keep it. It will not drain you to prove its worth. You have feared that restoration would reopen old wounds, that revisiting what once hurt would undo the healing you fought for. But this restoration does not reopen wounds, it seals them. It integrates the lesson so you no longer have to relive the pain to remember it. You will notice this difference in how you receive joy without bracing for disappointment, how you accept good things without scanning for hidden costs. Restoration recalibrates your nervous system as much as your circumstances. It teaches your body and mind that abundance does not have to be dangerous. And yes, there may be moments when grief resurfaces, not because restoration failed, but because healing is layered. Allow that grief to pass through without letting it rewrite the story. What is being restored is not fragile. It is anchored. It hath been tested by absence and refined by delay. You are not being compensated, you are being renewed. Renewal carries strength where loss carried weakness. Renewal carries clarity where confusion once lived. Renewal carries peace where fear used to speak the loudest. Do not rush this process by comparing it to what you remember. Let it reveal itself on its own terms. The measure of restoration is not how closely it matches the past, but how well it supports your future. And as this restoration continues to take shape, you will begin to realize that some things had to be lost so that better things could be received without being taken for granted. You are not getting back to life, you are stepping forward into it, with more capacity, more awareness, and more depth than you ever had before. Stay close here, because this is where many people hesitate without realizing why. The change you asked for is arriving, and fear will try to disguise itself as caution. You prayed for movement, for growth, for release from stagnation, but now that change is near, part of you wants to slow it down, to analyze it to exhaustion, to make sure it doesn't disrupt the fragile stability you built while waiting. That hesitation is understandable. You learned how to cope in stillness. You learned how to manage disappointment. You learned how to survive without expecting too much. Change threatens those coping strategies, even when it is the answer you asked for. Fear does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, what if you're not ready? Or what if this costs you more than you gain? Or what if you lose the little peace you found? But hear this clearly. Peace that depends on stagnation is not peace, it is containment. The change approaching you is not here to undo your healing. It is here to expand it. You are not being pulled backward into chaos. You are being invited forward into responsibility that matches your growth. Responsibility does not mean burden, it means trust. It means you are now capable of holding more without breaking. You may feel the weight of decision-making increase. You may feel the visibility rise. You may feel the need to act instead of wait. That does not mean you are being rushed. It means the season has shifted. And when seasons shift, the skills that kept you safe before must evolve. Do not mistake unfamiliarity for danger. Every meaningful transition requires you to release a version of safety that no longer fits. You are not betraying yourself by moving forward. You are honoring the work you have already done. Courage now looks different than it did before. It is quieter. It is steadier. It is rooted in discernment rather than impulse. Let yourself step into this change without rehearsing every possible failure. Let curiosity replace dread. Let trust replace control. You do not need to become someone else to walk into what is coming. You need to bring the whole, honest version of who you already are. The change you prayed for will ask you to participate, not hide. It will ask you to show up, not wait to be rescued. And you can do that now, because you are no longer hoping blindly, you are responding consciously. Stay open as this unfolds. Do not shrink to fit old limitations. The door opening before you is not a test to see if you deserve it. It is an invitation to live from the growth you have already earned. Listen closely now, because what I am asking of you next cannot be carried by certainty alone. You will need faith, not blind hope, but practice trust to walk into what is being revealed. Up to now, faith has mostly lived in waiting. It showed up as endurance, as restraint, as staying when leaving would have felt easier. But the faith required in the next season will look different. It will ask you to move before every detail is visible, to respond while some questions remain unanswered, to step forward without demanding guarantees that eliminate all risk. This is not because the path is unsafe, it is because growth requires participation. You have learned how to trust me in stillness, now you are learning how to trust me in motion. Motion reveals different fears. In waiting, you feared being forgotten. In movement, you may fear being exposed. You may worry that if you step fully into what is opening, your limitations will be seen, your imperfections highlighted, your control diminished. But faith is not the absence of fear, it is the decision not to let fear choose for you. You are not being asked to leap recklessly. You are being asked to walk attentively. Each step will clarify the next, but only if you take it. You have wanted visibility, but visibility comes with responsibility. You have wanted impact, but impact requires presence. You have wanted change, but change requires courage. Faith now is not about holding on, it is about engaging. You may feel the temptation to wait for one more sign, one more confirmation, one more layer of reassurance. But understand this, there comes a point where excessive confirmation becomes a substitute for trust. You already carry enough evidence from your own transformation. You already know what you are capable of now that fear no longer dominates your decisions. The revelation unfolding before you is not fragile. It is responsive. It will meet you where you step, but it cannot meet you where you stay frozen. Faith will ask you to speak when you would rather observe, to choose when you would rather delay, to show up when hiding feels safer. And yet, you are not alone in this movement. You are accompanied by the wisdom you gain through waiting, the discernment sharpened by pressure, the stability formed on prepared ground. Faith is simply the bridge between preparation and expression. It is the act of trusting that the ground will hold when you place your weight on it. And it will. You do not need to know how the entire journey unfolds, you only need to remain honest, present, and willing. The revelation will continue as you move, not before. Stay with me here, in this act of trust, because what you are about to walk into cannot be accessed by observation alone. It requires participation. And you are ready for that now, even if your hands tremble slightly as you begin. Let this truth interrupt every old label you still carry quietly. The story you have been telling yourself about who you are and what is possible is being rewritten. Not edited. Not revised. Written. You have lived for a long time under narratives formed by partial information, moments of failure mistaken for identity, seasons of delay mistaken for destiny, wounds mistaken for truth. You learned to explain yourself through what didn't work, to anticipate disappointment before hope could rise too high, to protect yourself by lowering expectations. Those narratives helped you survive, but they were never meant to define you. Now, as you move forward, you may notice tension between who you have been and who you are becoming. The tension is not confusion, it is transition. Old stories resist being replaced because they are familiar, even when they are limiting. You may catch yourself defaulting to old explanations. This is just how my life goes. I always have to struggle. Things don't last for me, and feel the discomfort when those explanations no longer fit your current reality. That discomfort is a signal that the narrative is losing authority. What replaces it will not be built on denial of the past, but on integration. The past is not erased. It is recontextualized. Your mistakes become teachers instead of verdicts. Your losses become references instead of anchors. Your resilience becomes a foundation rather than a burden. You are no longer defined by what happened to you. You are defined by how you respond now that you see more clearly. Writing a narrative takes time, because identity does not shift instantly just because circumstances do. You will practice telling a new story with your choices before it feels natural in your thoughts. You will act from growth before your emotions fully catch up. That is normal. Do not wait to feel completely confident before you live differently. Confidence is often the result, not the prerequisite, of alignment. As the narrative changes, you may notice others struggling to keep up with who you are becoming. They may reference your past while you are standing in your present. That does not mean you are pretending. It means you are evolving. Let them adjust at their own pace. Your responsibility is not to maintain consistency with outdated expectations, but to remain truthful to your current state. The rewritten narrative will show up in small ways, first in how you speak to yourself, what you tolerate, what you pursue without apology. Over time, it will reshape how you make decisions, how you handle conflict, how you imagine the future. You are not becoming someone unrecognizable. You are becoming someone more accurate. And as this narrative continues to take shape, you will realize that the story unfolding now has room for depth, for joy, for purpose that does not require constant struggle to justify itself. Stay present in this rewrite. Do not rush to finalize it. Let it unfold sentence by sentence, choice by choice, as you continue walking forward with awareness and trust. Pay attention now, because this realization will widen your perspective and steady your purpose. What is unfolding in your life was never meant to end with you. You thought this journey was personal, and it is, but it is not private. The growth you endured, the waiting you survived, the internal shifts you barely noticed at first are not only shaping your future, they are preparing you to become a reference point for others who are still trying to believe. You may not see yourself as influential, and that humility has protected you, but influence does not always announce itself with a platform. Sometimes it shows up as presence. Sometimes it speaks through consistency. Sometimes it changes lives simply by refusing to give up when giving up would have been understandable. People are watching you more closely than you realize, not to judge you, but to see if perseverance actually leads somewhere. Your life is becoming an answer to questions others are afraid to ask out loud. They are observing how you handle disappointment without becoming bitter, how you move forward without denying your pain, how you allow change without losing yourself. That quiet courage is contagious. You may never hear the full impact of your endurance, but that does not lessen its reach. There are people who will keep going because you did. There are people who will reconsider quitting because they saw you wait. There are people who will believe again, not because you preached at them, but because your life demonstrated that growth is possible without losing integrity. This does not mean you are responsible for saving anyone. It means your authenticity gives others permission to be honest about their own struggles. You create space simply by being real. And as what you have been building begins to show, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Your story will begin to shift the atmosphere around you. Conversations will deepen. Trust will form more quickly. Your words will carry weight not because they are loud, but because they are lived. Do not underestimate this role. It does not require perfection. It requires presence. Stay grounded in who you are becoming, not who others expect you to be. Your task is not to perform your growth, but to embody it. When you do, the ripple effect will unfold naturally. This is why the preparation was thorough. This is why the waiting mattered. You were not only being shaped for your own next step, you were being positioned to show others that forward movement is possible even after long seasons of uncertainty. Let this awareness refine your choices, not burden them. You do not need to carry everyone. You only need to walk honestly. That honesty will do more than you think. Hold this close now, because favor changes environments quickly, and how you carry yourself will determine what it becomes. When recognition, opportunity, or ease begins to show up, let humility be your anchor. Favor does not mean you are superior. It means you are entrusted. It arrives not as a reward for perfection, but as a response to alignment. You may feel relief when things begin to flow, when resistance softens, when doors open with less effort than before, and that relief is natural. But remember how you arrived here. You did not bypass the work. You did not skip the waiting. You did not avoid the internal reckoning. Favor is not proof that you are finished growing. It is evidence that you are ready to grow in new conditions. The temptation when favor appears is subtle. It whispers that you can finally exhale completely, that you no longer need to stay attentive, that you can rely on momentum alone. But momentum without mindfulness can drift. Humility keeps you listening. It keeps you grounded in gratitude rather than entitlement. It reminds you that ease is a gift, not a guarantee. Stay curious. Stay teachable. Stay aware of how quickly circumstances can change when alignment shifts. This is not a warning meant to instill fear. It is an invitation to remain present. Favor responds well to stewardship. It expands when you handle it with care. You will notice that some people will treat you differently as favor appears. Some will admire you more openly. Some will distance themselves quietly. Some will assume you have changed, even when you haven't. Do not chase approval, and do not resent misunderstanding. Let your consistency speak. Let your values remain visible. Let your humility reassure both yourself and others that growth has not disconnected you from your core. Humility does not mean shrinking. It means standing firmly without needing to dominate. It means acknowledging support without denying effort. It means recognizing that you are part of a larger unfolding, not the sole architect of it. As favor continues to show itself, you will be tempted to measure yourself by outcomes again. Resist that urge. Measure yourself by alignment, by integrity, by how well you remain connected to what matters beneath the surface. Favor is not the finish line. It is a new terrain. Walk it with awareness. Walk it with gratitude. Walk it with humility that honors both where you came from and where you are going. Listen carefully, because this moment requires discernment more than excitement. What you are about to receive will need guarding, not broadcasting. When something precious enters your life, whether opportunity, influence, clarity, or peace, its value is proven by how intentionally you protect it. You have learned through loss that not everything thrives in exposure. Some things grow best in quiet stewardship, where attention is deliberate and boundaries are respected. Guarding does not mean hiding out of fear. It means honoring what you've been entrusted with by choosing where and how you invest your energy. You no longer owe everyone access to your process. You no longer need to explain every step or justify every decision. Protection is not secrecy, it is wisdom applied. You will notice that as favor increases, so does curiosity. People will want proximity, insight, association. Some will come with genuine support. Others will come with expectations that slowly drain you. Discernment is how you tell the difference. Guarding looks like pacing yourself instead of proving yourself. It looks like saying no without guilt, resting without apology, choosing depth over constant engagement. You have already felt what happens when you give everything away too quickly, how momentum stalls, how clarity blurs, how peace erodes. This time is different because you are different. You are allowed to be selective. You are allowed to move slowly even when things accelerate around you. Guarding also means tending your inner life with consistency. What sustains growth is not visibility but nourishment. Pay attention to what keeps you grounded, routines that restore you, practices that quiet your mind, relationships that tell you the truth without trying to control you. Do not sacrifice these for productivity or praise. What you are building requires longevity, not just impact. There will be moments when guarding feels uncomfortable, especially if you are used to being accessible and accommodating. You may worry that boundaries will be misinterpreted, that restraint will be mistaken for distance. Let that worry pass. Those who respect your growth will understand. Those who do not are revealing their intentions. Guarding is how you remain present rather than depleted. It is how you ensure that what arrives does not cost you more than it gives. Remember, stewardship is an active practice. You check in. You adjust. You notice when something begins to demand more than it offers. You respond early instead of waiting until resentment builds. This is not vigilance born of fear, it is care born of maturity. Guard what you are given so it can mature with you. Protect the peace that made room for it. Protect the clarity that recognizes its worth. Protect the rhythm that allows it to endure. What you guard thoughtfully will serve you faithfully. And as you do this, you will find that guarding does not restrict growth, it preserves it. Stay present now, because clarity is approaching in a way that does not require explanation. You will know when the moment arrives, not because it is loud, but because it fits. Timing reveals itself through coherence. Pieces align without force. Decisions feel firm without urgency. The noise that once competed for your attention quiets, not because options disappear, but because one path becomes unmistakably congruent with who you are now. You have learned to distrust ease because you once equated struggle with significance. But struggle is not a prerequisite for meaning. Alignment is. When timing is right, you do not have to contort yourself to make things work. You do not have to convince your intuition to cooperate. There is a calm certainty that settles in, not certainty that everything will be effortless, but certainty that you are not out of place. You will notice this timing in your body as much as in your thoughts. Tension releases. Breath deepens. Sleep improves. Your energy stabilizes instead of spiking and crashing. These are signals you once ignored while chasing outcomes. Now you recognize them as guidance. Timing also clarifies priorities. What once felt urgent fades. What truly matters gains definition. You stop juggling possibilities and start committing to direction. This is not impulsive, it is focused. And with focus comes a sense of dignity in your choices. You are no longer reacting to pressure or comparison. You are responding to readiness. When timing arrives, it does not erase doubt entirely, but it reframes it. Doubt becomes a question to be answered with attention, not a command to retreat. You move forward thoughtfully, not because you feel invincible, but because you feel aligned. Others may ask why now, why this, why you, and you may not have a concise explanation. Timing often defies tidy narratives. It is felt more than it is argued. Let that be enough. You do not need consensus to proceed. You need congruence. Timing also brings responsibility. When the moment is right, delay becomes a choice rather than a necessity. You will feel that distinction clearly. Prolonged hesitation will begin to feel heavier than movement. That is your cue. Do not wait for perfection to act. Perfection is static. Timing is dynamic. Engage with it while it is present. Timing does not demand haste, but it does require participation. You step in with humility, with attentiveness, with readiness to adjust as you learn. And as you do, confirmation accumulates not as fireworks, but as steady reinforcement. Doors respond. Resources align. Conversations become constructive. Resistance no longer defines the journey. This is how you recognize timing, not by the absence of effort, but by the presence of coherence. Stay attentive to that coherence. It will guide you faithfully as you continue forward, step by step, into what is ready to take shape. Listen to this with the seriousness it deserves, because lingering glances can quietly undo forward motion. Do not look back at what has already been closed behind you. Closure is not punishment. It is protection. You are tempted to revisit what once felt familiar, to reopen conversations that ended without the resolution you wanted, to romanticize seasons that were survivable but never sustainable. Memory has a way of softening edges when time passes, editing out the exhaustion and replaying only the comfort. But comfort without alignment is a subtle trap. What closed did so because it could not carry the weight of who you are now. It demanded compromises that would have eroded your integrity, asked for silence where your voice needed to grow, required you to stay smaller so others could remain comfortable. Looking back does not just slow you down, it confuses your present with questions that have already been answered by experience. You may feel the pull to check in, to see if things have changed, to wonder if you misread the signs. That pull is not intuition, it is attachment trying to renegotiate boundaries. The truth is, you already learned what you needed to learn there. You paid the tuition with time, energy, and emotion. Returning for another lesson would not make you wiser. It would make you tired. Forward motion requires consent. You consent by refusing to entertain invitations that lead backward. You consent by honoring endings even when they were painful. You consent by trusting that what is ahead does not require you to retrieve pieces of yourself from places that diminished you. Let the closed doors remain closed without hostility or regret. Gratitude can exist alongside release. You can appreciate what a season taught you without returning to live inside it. Closure is a clean edge, it allows healing to knit properly. When you keep reopening what has closed, the wound stays tender. When you let it be, strength returns. Notice how much energy you reclaim when you stop explaining your past to justify your present. Notice the clarity that emerges when you stop comparing new opportunities to old disappointments. Your future does not need to compete with your history. It only needs your availability. And availability grows when attention is not split between what is forming and what has finished forming. You are allowed to move on without animosity. You are allowed to say, "That chapter mattered, and it is complete." Completion is not abandonment. It is respect for timing. What lies ahead requires focus, not nostalgia. Keep your gaze forward not because the past was worthless, but because your capacity is precious. Spend it where growth is happening. Trust that what closed did so with intention, clearing a path you could not have walked if you kept turning around to look. Take this in carefully, because it reframes success in a way that will sustain you. What is happening now is not a brief rise, it is establishment. Elevation alone can be intoxicating. It feels like momentum, recognition, relief. But elevation without roots is fragile. Establishment is slower, quieter, sturdier. It builds structure beneath visibility so that what lifts you does not later drop you. You are being positioned in a way that prioritizes durability over spectacle. That means processes are being set, habits reinforced, values clarified. It means you are learning how to hold influence without being ruled by it, how to lead without performing, how to move forward without losing your center. Establishment requires patience even when things are going well. It asks you to solidify foundations while the view improves. You may feel pressure to accelerate, to capitalize on momentum, to do more because you can. But establishment whispers a wiser rhythm. Do what lasts. Strengthen what supports you. Choose consistency over constant expansion. This is how stability becomes natural rather than forced. You will notice that opportunities now ask for commitment rather than novelty. They require follow-through, responsibility, stewardship. That is not limitation. It is trust being extended. You are being asked to show up reliably, not impressively. To build teams, systems, rhythms that can operate without burning you out. To say no to auctions that look exciting but dilute your focus. Establishment also means refining identity. You are learning who you are when the pressure to prove yourself diminishes. You are discovering what you enjoy when validation is no longer the fuel. This self-knowledge anchors you. It keeps you from chasing roles that do not fit or success that costs too much. You may feel moments of impatience. Why not move faster? Why not take the leap? No, but establishment answers with perspective. Speed is not the same as progress. Progress leaves infrastructure behind it. It ensures that when challenges come, and they will, you are not improvising from exhaustion. You have reserves. You have systems. You have support. Being established means your life can absorb impact without collapsing. It means your work can grow without distorting your values. It means your relationships can deepen without being overshadowed by ambition. You are not being posed. You are being anchored. Anchors are invisible from a distance, but they are the reason ships can withstand storms. Let establishment do its quiet work. Honor the routines that ground you, the mentors who sharpen you, the boundaries that protect you. Celebrate milestones without rushing past them. You are not just rising, you are being rooted. And rooted things do not fear weather. They use it to grow stronger. Listen with your whole attention now, because perspective will keep you steady as movement continues. What you are experiencing is not a conclusion, it is an initiation. You might be tempted to exhale as if you finally arrived, to frame this moment as the finish line after so much endurance. But arrival is not the language of growth, unfolding is. What is taking shape now is the first visible expression of something that will continue to expand as you engage with it. Beginnings carry excitement, but they also carry responsibility. They ask you to stay curious, adaptable, and committed beyond the initial surge of momentum. You are stepping into a chapter that will teach you new skills, stretch your capacity, and invite you to refine what you already know. But does not diminish what you've accomplished, it honors it by putting it to use. Beginnings can feel deceptively light at first. The relief of movement, the clarity of direction, the validation of alignment, all of that is real. But beneath that relief is an invitation to remain attentive. Early stages set tone. They establish habits. They determine what you normalize. How you move now will influence how sustainable this path becomes later. Do not rush to label success too quickly, and do not underestimate the power of small, consistent choices. You are learning how to inhabit this new space without abandoning your center. It takes time. Allow yourself to be a beginner again, even with all your experience. Humility in beginnings creates resilience later. You will encounter new questions, new challenges, new versions of yourself you haven't met yet. That is not regression. It is expansion. Growth introduces complexity before it introduces mastery. Stay patient with the learning curve. Stay honest about what you don't know. Stay willing to ask for support without interpreting it as weakness. This beginning is generous. It offers room to adjust, to iterate, to refine. It does not demand perfection. It invites participation. And as you participate, you will notice layers revealing themselves gradually. What looks simple now will gain depth. What feels manageable will ask for deeper commitment. That is how beginnings mature into something enduring. Keep your expectations flexible. Let them evolve, with experience rather than locking them into rigid outcomes. You are not meant to sprint through this season. You are meant to inhabit it. Pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you. Notice where your values feel affirmed and where they feel compromised. Use those signals to shape your path forward. Beginnings are generous teachers if you listen. They show you what works before consequences are heavy. They allow correction before patterns calcify. This is a gift. Receive it fully. Do not rush to skip ahead to later chapters. The strength you will need there is being cultivated here. Stay present. Stay engaged. This is not the end of your journey, it is the moment your journey begins to move with intention, visibility, and direction that you can now sustain. Stay alert now, because what you are waiting for is no longer approaching, it is underway. The movement has already begun, and your awareness will determine how fully you participate in it. You may still be scanning the horizon for something dramatic, some unmistakable signal that announces change with certainty. But meaningful movement often begins quietly, gaining strength through consistency rather than spectacle. Look at what has already shifted. Your decisions are clearer, your boundaries firmer, your energy more intentional. Look at how opportunities are responding differently now, how conversations feel more aligned, how resistance no longer defines every step. These are not coincidences, they are indicators. Movement shows itself through responsiveness. When effort meets cooperation instead of friction, something is in motion. When your inner world stabilizes while your outer world evolves, something is being orchestrated. You do not need to strain to see it. You need to stay attentive enough not to miss it. Awareness is participation. It allows you to respond in real time rather than react after the fact. Watch for subtle invitations, requests that align with your values, openings that respect your pace, challenges that stretch you without depleting you. These are signals guiding you forward. Movement also asks you to remain adaptable. Plans may refine themselves. Expectations may shift. What you thought would happen first may happen later, and what you did anticipate may arrive early. Do not interpret adjustment as failure. Flexibility is how momentum is sustained. Hold your direction firmly, but hold your methods lightly. Let feedback inform you without discouraging you. Let success humble you rather than distract you. Let setbacks instruct you rather than stop you. As movement continues, temptation will arise to measure progress constantly. Resist that urge. Measurement has its place, but fixation can steal presence. Stay engaged with the work in front of you. Tend to what you can influence today. Momentum compounds when attention is steady. You will also notice that movement attracts noise, opinions, expectations, projections. Filter them carefully. Not every voice deserves equal weight. Stay anchored to your values. Stay connected to the practices that keep you grounded. The clearer you remain internally, the more smoothly you will navigate external change. Remember, movement does not mean chaos. It means coordination. Coordination requires listening, pacing, and discernment. You are capable of that now. You have learned how to wait, you are learning how to move. Both are forms of wisdom. Watch closely, not with anxiety, but with presence. Notice what is opening. Notice what is closing. Notice where your energy naturally flows. These are your cues. The hand guiding this movement is steady, intentional, and already active. Your role is not to force it or question it endlessly, but to walk with it attentively. Stay here. Stay awake. Stay willing. The unfolding ahead is not something you will stumble into accidentally, it is something you will recognize because you are finally prepared to see it as it is. Amen.